What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are working on Keith's brand new Tacoma. This thing has about 500 miles on it. We're going to start taking it apart. We're going to be replacing the OEM suspension with the Locked Offroad 2.5 non-resi kits. So we've got the front and the rear ready to go. We had Dirt King next day air us some upper control arms so we can make this happen for Keith today. So we're going to dive into the install, kind of show you guys what you need to do first, what tools you need, and basically how to do this as efficiently as possible. Let's get started. So step one on this project is going to be breaking the lugs loose. We don't want to loosen them all the way just because the truck is still sitting on the wheels. Once we break all lugs loose on this wheel here, we're going to go ahead and throw the truck up in the air and get started on this driver's side. So now that we have all 6 lugs on the driver's side and passenger side broken loose, we're going to go ahead and jack up the truck. So we're doing it on the frame of the truck here, and then we'll throw a jack stand on towards the front of the frame. Just for another safety precaution, when you take the wheel off, you can actually put that under the front of the truck as well, laying down, just in case it does drop. So since we're doing one side at a time, we have the truck on a jack stand, but we're also going to leave the jack where it's at with some load on it, but not a whole lot, just in case that decides to give out. We have this as the backup, and then the tire itself will go laid down flat underneath there too. Since when you do these kits, you have to do upper control arms as well. What we're going to do is start with removing the factory upper control arm to get it out of the way to be able to pull that shock out. Then we'll put the new shock in, new upper control arms in. So to start, we're going to remove the 17mm bolt on the sway bar end link.
I pre-loosened it.
Yep. Now we can pull that end link out, and then from there what we'll do is remove the bolt on the, or the nut on the upper control arm through bolt. Once that's off, then we'll remove the nut connecting the upper control arm to the spindle. So since we are doing upper control arms on this build out, what we did was went ahead and removed the battery. That way we have room to slide the upper control arm bolt through. You may have to remove, if you have a 2020 I believe or newer, there's this little guy here you might have to remove to get out of the way to have that upper control arm bolt come through, but we'll let you know soon. Now that our battery is removed out of the way, we're going to start on the upper control arm bolt. So you have a nut on one side with a hard brake line right next to it. Be careful of that brake line. Remove that nut, and then we're going to work on sliding that bolt all the way through up to the engine bay. That's the tricky part. You do have to bend some of the sheet metal up top to get that bolt to actually go through, which is a lot of fun to do on a brand new truck, but yeah, it's a process. So once you guys have your battery out, everything like that, we want to start bending the sheet metal out of the way so we can actually get this upper control arm bolt all the way through to pull that arm out. Now when Toyota builds these trucks, it's all part of the chassis and the frame when they put these uppers on, and they put the body on top. When they put the body on top, you have no room to get these out. So when Toyota actually does these, they usually lift the body off the truck to get these uppers off, but we don't have that option, so we're bending sheet metal to get it out of the way. Alright, so after some finessing, bending the sheet metal out of the way, flathead screwdriver on the head of the bolt with a mallet, we got the bolt out. Now we are moving on to the next step, which is going to be disconnecting brake lines from the upper control arm since we're pulling it out, as well as disconnecting it from the spindle. So when we bend the spindle or move it out of the way to get the shock out, we're not putting harm on any brake lines or sensors. So we weren't sure about the sway bar, but it looks like we are going to have to pull the sway bar to get this shock in there. I'd almost just recommend leaving it out, but that's really up to you and your personal preference. I think the truck personally drives better without it, but again, it's up to you. So to do this, you're going to pull the skid first and then the sway bar after. So as you guys can see, everything is out. So what we're doing now is we're just going to throw in the Dirt King upper control arms to hold this spindle in place so Keith doesn't have to hold it anymore. Once that's done, then we're going to go over and figure out if we want to add any more preload to this locked shock. Right off the bat, you are getting like probably 3/8 of an inch lift, but these springs are also 50 pounds heavier than these ones. So these are a 550 from the factory. These are a 14-inch 600, where I think it's going to hold the lift a lot better. Before putting your upper control arms in, make sure you put these little grease fittings onto the arms. These do not have to be very tight. You just want them facing the outside, so that way you're easily able to grease and do maintenance on the arm bushings. And just like that, this one's ready to go. So now that the grease fittings are on there, we're going to take the provided large washers and the little tube of grease, and we're just going to grease the outsides of these bushings here, just so they can articulate and move around the way that they're supposed to. Shock is now in place. What we did is we threw the lower part of the shock down past the lower control arm, put the top in first, use those 14 mils, the 14 mil nuts on top to hold the shock in place. From there, with somebody holding the spindle, or you can bungee the spindle as well, we put in the lower shock to the upper or the lower control arm, put the bolt through so now the shock's in place. Now what we can do is just kind of tighten everything down and start working on that upper control arm. So we're doing the lower shock bolt now. That's going to torque to, Toyota says 61, we're going to 65. And then we're going to torque the upper nuts to get the shock in place, and then we should be good to go. New upper control arm is in, as well as the new shock. So now we are just going to tighten up the bolt for the upper control arm. And then we should be good to tighten the upper control arm to the spindle with that castle nut, put the cotter pin in there. Put all of the splash guards back, bend the sheet metal back just a little bit, probably hit it with a little coat of paint, and then this side will be good to go. Then we'll basically repeat the process on the other side. You don't need to remove the battery obviously for the other side, but bend a little bit of sheet metal on the other side, repeat the process we did over here, and then you guys should be pretty much done with the front. So once you guys have your new shocks in, your new uppers, whether they're SPC or Dirt King, doesn't really matter. You are going to have to grease the ball joints at minimum. With the Dirt Kings, you grease the bushings as well as the ball joints. So that's what we're doing right now. And then we'll be good on the front and head towards the back. So we just finished up the passenger side front. So now we're going to work our way to the rear. These guys are going to throw that wheel and tire back on. The passenger side is a little bit easier. You just have like an AC line to move out of the way. It takes one bolt, move out of the way. That upper control arm bolt will go straight through. Put the new uppers in, new shock in. You guys are good to go. They're going to button that up, and then we'll show you how to do the rear. So after you guys get your rear wheel off, there's a 17 millimeter bolt on the lower shock, and then a 14 millimeter up top. Now the trick for the up top one is, so if you look closely, you can see that this has a squared edge on top. So you can hold a pair of pliers with that while you wrench on this to help break this loose, and it'll prevent the shock from spinning while you try to loosen it. So here's a quick comparison. Block 2.5, Bilstein 1.5. You can see the shaft difference there. Absolutely insane. And the shock body there. So you've got a lot more oil, a lot more down travel, and basically a lot more off-road capability. You get 25% more down travel. So more droop, more flex. Plus you got all the shock oil in this one to help keep it cool, whereas this would probably not do so hot. So what we're doing is we're putting in the lower part of the shock. So bolt through, then we'll put the nut on there. We won't tighten it all the way yet. Then what we're gonna do is compress the shock, and then basically that top part will go straight into the upper shock mount.
That's right where I stopped too.
We're done. So the truck has the lock 2.5s. Up front, no resi, and in the rear, no resi. It looks really good. If you guys buy this kit and you want more lift, I would preload the spring on the fronts about another inch or so. You guys, I don't know if you guys can see all my sweat. It is, so I'm in Florida, obviously. It's 91 degrees with about 90% humidity, so it's hot as hell. And we did this install outside, but it's all done. So I'll have Keith kind of drive it around and show you guys what it looks like. Can you see my sweat? It might not be as bad right now, but it's bad. All right, so rear is done. There is the new rear flex. So it's about 25% gain over the stock shocks, plus they're 2.5, so they hold a lot more oil, better for off-road cooling, and they honestly just look a lot better. Everything's blacked out inside there. You guys probably can't see it. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns on this 2.5 no resi kit, leave it down in the comments or just shoot me a message on Instagram. Until next time, see you guys later. Peace.